Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined this week by Thad Greenson, news editor, and Iridion Casares, staff writer at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Hi.
It's good to see you again, Iridion. This is week 2 without Jen, but this should be fantastic. Last week, Thad had to fly solo. This week, we are graced with your presence, and we really appreciate you seeing you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm glad to be here.
Right on. Why don't we just dive right in? Ridiana, why don't you tell us what is on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Yeah, so my cover story is on the cover this week, and it is all about California Senate Bill 1383, which is a law that's now mandating organic waste recycling. So what that means is basically we're now going to have to throw away our food scraps and any other organic products that are coming from plant and animals into a curbside bin for collection and recycling. So yeah, if you have, I think it's going to be like a 3-bin system. So if you have a yard waste bin already, if you have you live in a residential area and you're subscribed to those services, all you're going to have to do is just throw your food scraps into that bin now. This is a really big law, and there's a lot that's going into it. And so this story is a really, really comprehensive one, and it just basically runs down what Humboldt County needs to do to get ready to implement the law and what's currently happening right now in order to provide those services.
I know people have talked to me. People have asked me in the recent past, hey, I heard this was, and it's like July now, but people have told me this is a law. What are you doing about it? And I basically said, I'm waiting for North Coast Journal people to inform me and tell me what I need to do. So this is really, really timely.
This is your week.
Yeah, I'm going to get the answers. So you mentioned it's a state law that went into effect, and everybody's required to do it, and it is going to impact us because it's everybody. But before we dive into some of the complications or what the impact is on people, residents, can you just say a little bit about what it is and how it came to be and what they're intending to do with this law?
Yeah, definitely. So this law is aimed at reducing short-lived climate pollutants, specifically methane emissions. So when we throw our garbage or our food scraps and any other organic material into the garbage stream, the decomposing scraps, they emit methane, and that's a climate pollutant that's, I think, 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it's really, really harmful to the air, and it's one of the worst pollutants that we've had. So that's basically what the law is aiming at doing. Use the organic waste, so it's going to become something useful.
Okay.
The EPA has reported that these methane emissions could be used as bioenergy. And so the law is going to kind of create a circular economy with that. So we're going to require, or cities and governments are going to have to buy organic waste byproducts like compost, mulch, bioenergy, and renewable natural gas. So it's all about diverting these methane emissions to be useful in our cities and counties and stuff.
So it truly is aspirational. It's not just I hate to say this because it's childish, but there people are saying, how are you going to stop cows from farting if you don't want methane? And that's but no, there's things we can do. And not only that, we can use it. We can capture it and use it. I hadn't even actually thought about that side of it. So they went into effect. I think it's already the law. And then now our town has to do something with that and come up with a plan. Who'd you talk to, and what are the preliminary tentative plans for our community here?
Yeah, so this is probably a really a massive change in our waste management system. So Humboldt Waste Management Authority, they actually hired, so they are a joint powers agreement between like different cities in our county. And they hired a consulting firm, an engineering group called Edgar and Associates. And so they've dealt with this law before and have implemented organic waste recycling in other cities and counties in the state of California. And so they created a roadmap just detailing what the law is and how Humboldt County needs to get there. So Evan Edgar, the principal engineer at Edgar and Associates, was one of my main sources, and he I read through the whole report, and it's detailing, I detailed a little bit about it in my story this week.
So like what's the sort of impact or the plan, the tentative plan for our community to adapt and comply with this law and figure out a way to make it happen here in our community?
Right. So there's a few things that Humboldt County needs to do in order to offer this service. And the main one that's happening right now is creating a organic waste tipping floor, which is just basically a destination where all the trucks, all the waste hauling companies like Recology, and I think in McKinleyville is Tom's Trash, where they're going to collect the organic waste and they're going to dump it into a facility where it's going to be put on a conveyor belt so that it can be sorted and separated and readied for transportation to the next facility. So right now, Humboldt Waste Management Authority is actually closing and relocating their Eureka Recycling Center to become the organic waste tipping floor in our region. So they're closing that August 1st. I think it's like in a couple weeks, actually. I was just looking at my calendar right here. And they're going to find a new location. I think they're talking about relocating it in Arcata. And they're just going to retrofit the site to be for organic waste, which is pretty interesting. And then the next thing another thing that's happening is our cities and county municipalities are updating their ordinances, their waste collection ordinances to offer organic waste recycling. So in Fortuna, they've already updated their ordinance to require that, and they're hoping to offer the service by January of next year. And Recology is also like, I think they're buying new trucks and stuff and more bins so that people can subscribe to those 3-bin systems.
So not everybody uses the pay services for their waste. So there's an impact on those other people too. Is that something that you covered?
Not exactly in this story, but I did talk to Thad about how, maybe that's a follow-up story of how it's going to impact, because I was thinking about the local worm guy who is actually like I think he collects people's compost and makes their like food scraps to make compost and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a different story.
Okay.
See you soon.
I imagine it will be like when municipalities here instituted like mandatory curbside pickup for trash and recycling. Most of them had like a self-hauling affidavit that folks could fill out, kind of promising or swearing that they're going to take it themselves to the tipping station or to the dump. And I imagine they'll have a component like that.
So like maybe you can reduce that, because basically you're not allowed to at some point, once it's phased in, you're not going to be allowed to throw these materials in your regular waste stream. And so in order to do that, you should divert it.
As Iridion wrote, like sets up a whole like inspection program. So the garbage hauler is also like going to be tasked with auditing people's trash to see if, there's plastics in the organic waste bin. And if there are, they could face fines and stuff. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that anticipated my next question, or what are some potential complications or pitfalls or obstacles to successful implementation? So that's one of them. There's the potential problem is that people aren't going to comply, but then there's a workaround, which is they're going to be inspections.
Yeah.
Anything else come up that might be a problem or a challenge in implementation?
I think it's going to be a lot about like educating, people. I think in the law, I didn't really go into this in my story, but cities and governments are going to have to hold that education piece really, really tightly. And they're going to have to go around and tell people what's allowed in their bins and that kind of stuff. So I think that might be a little bit hard. And the fines too for if you're not recycling properly, which I think I've been on this beat for quite a while, and I've changed the way that I've recycled in my own household. So I'm ready for it. But for people who haven't really done that, I think it's going to be something that's new and overwhelming a bit.
How so? Just to clarify, just so people get a sense of what they can expect. What's the overwhelming part? Actually, the behavior change itself?
Yeah, I think so. People are going to just have to change the way that they throw their trash. They're going to have to double think about whether that banana peel goes into the garbage bin or, you know what I mean? And they're going to have to I'm thinking about the stickers that come in all the produce. You're really going to have to take that off because that's plastic. It's sticky,
Because I've edited Iridian's reporting on recycling stuff in my household, I'm the one who people look at and hold something up. Is this recyclable?
Yeah.
And I imagine now it's going to be egg cartons and, like Iridian was saying, the stickers on produce, and I'm going to face a whole gauntlet of questions. I know.
So I've been at people's homes before where, similar to what you just said, where you kind of hold things up and you look around, you scramble for the little recycling symbol on it, and then you say, oh, nope, it's not there. This is just going in the garbage. So that's a little different than what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here, I think, is that people are actually going to have compost piles and things like that to divert. But if they, I don't know if you want to comment on that, or alternatively, just that. You said there's going to be 3 bins, right? So we have garbage, we have recycling, and we have green waste. Is that food is going to go in the green waste?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought of it as yard waste, but it's the green waste bin. Yeah. That's where it's all going to go. Yeah. And for example, right now, I'm not subscribed to the green waste bin. So now I would have to go and pay for that service to do it. So I think that's another thing.
We do a lot of not we personally, but for people that I know or people that I've seen, it's grass and branches. That's about it. So it's kind of going to be weird to be oh, and by the way, I'm going to put my, like you said, banana peels and all of that in there. But it's progress, I think, right? I mean, the goal is that we're actually going to convert this into energy and reduce our landfill footprint and a whole bunch of other ways. It'll be improvements. Any other improvements or benefits or observations you have?
Yeah. So in my story, I also talk about how the law is also requiring a food recovery program. So it's basically businesses like restaurants and any other organization that has a big cafeteria or that kind of stuff, how they're going to have to donate leftover food to nonprofits like local shelters and food pantries to kind of divert, to prevent the salvageable food that you can eat from going to the landfill and emitting more methane emissions. So I talk a little bit about that. And so Evan Edgar, the people who wrote the report for how to implement SB 1383, they are currently, or they have finished a food recovery program, a strategic plan for the county. And now that's in the hands of the local solid waste task force, who's going to review it at their next meeting on Monday. Nice. So that's also happening too, which I think is really, really interesting. And I also talk about how food recovery, how the amount of food recovery capacity in the county right now. So Zero Waste Humboldt actually did an assessment, and they found that all the nonprofits, because of demand, because of the pandemic and inflation, they could use more non-perishable food, but right now they don't have the money or the storage for perishable food. So they don't have the cold storage space to keep food from spoiling or from going into a temperature that's not safe for consumption. So I talk a little bit about that too in my story, which I think is a great
This is
idea.
great. It's a knock-on benefit. It's a knock-on benefit, additional value add to this program. So this is cool. Thank you for doing the research, investigation, figuring it out for us. Now we can pass it along to our other friends who we'll try to point them in your direction into North Coast Journal article, but we now have the knowledge too. So really, it was great talking to you, Iridian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise.
Thad, what is going on the Arts and Features beat in the North Coast Journal this week?
So weird to have you asking that, Dave.
I know.
This week we have a wonderful table story from a freelancer, Aaron Young, who regular readers and viewers and listeners might remember does a fair amount of wine reviews for us and coverage of kind of the wine industry locally. And so she's stepped out of that a little bit and wrote about the newest addition to Arcata's food scene and brewery scene. Nice. So it's Oak Brewery and Deli, and it's on in the building on 11th and H Street, which incidentally, I didn't know that building is a historic structure and has its own name. It's called the Pythian Castle and was built by the Knights of Pythian in 1885. So that was something I learned from reading Aaron's story. Yeah. But Oak Brewery and Deli it's in the place adjacent to Vintage Avenger, which holds the corner spot there. And it used to be Crush and I think another wine bar, and they have repurposed it into a really small batch brewery and deli. And the deli case has, kind of all the traditional stuff you would find in a deli. And they have a bunch of specialty sandwiches, a couple of which are described in the story and sound awesome, like a brie prosciutto and apple panini on a baguette, which sounds fantastic. And
talking my language.
I'm very hungry when I looked at it. But Aaron kind of makes clear that really that this place is all about the beer. And that's their calling card, and that's what the owner, Bryce Chirpelis, is most excited about. And so he comes from a home brewing family that has brewed for I think almost close to 30 years, and they in a fairly large scale for home brewers, but. His parents uprooted to Florida, and as Aaron says, Bryce called dibs on the brewing equipment. And has a couple 100-gallon casks that he's brewing in. And so he's doing 2 batches at a time of kind of niche offerings. And so the way Aaron describes it is kind of because it's such small batches that there's a really high rate of turnover. And so, whatever you had last time you went there, it might not be there when you go back, but you'll get to try something new. So when she was there, she tried the two beers they had on offer, which is the Redwood Creek Sessions IPA, which I don't know for the unversed. Session IPA, it has all of the high hoppy flavor of a traditional IPA, but a much lower alcohol content. So you can, have a beer in the middle of the day without then having to take a really long nap or something like that. And then they also had a Berliner Weiss Sour, which are you a sour fan, David?
I wish I could say I was, but I don't love it. I'll always dabble, but I don't love it.
Iridian, have you tried them? Do you like them?
No, I don't like any hazy IPAs or that kind of stuff. I'm getting there though. I'm getting there.
Yeah. So the sours I've tried and are just not my jam. I know a lot of people totally love them, but I think it's an acquired taste and one that I have not quite acquired yet. But Aaron raved about both of these, and then also said that she got to kind of do a preliminary sample of a number of batches that hadn't gone through the full fermentation process yet. So they're kind of flat and not sudsy, but she got kind of the flavor profiles of them, including a red ale and a couple others that she just was really excited about going back to try. So nice. It sounds neat.
I think it's really cool, this whole small batch idea, because there's lots of places to go in town where you get bunch of variety, but anytime someone's making it homemade there on site, it's really cool. I actually did stop by there, but right around the time that they opened, and they weren't really open yet, but they were busily working away making beer. I just never made it back. So thanks for putting this on everybody's radar. I'm definitely gonna have to swing by there, especially because I work in Arcata anyway, so it's right just a few blocks. I definitely got to do it.
Absolutely. Beer and a sandwich sounds delightful. It'll be, to your point about the small batches. I mean, it'll be interesting. They Aaron talks about how they have plans to scale up to 1,000-gallon batches and actually do more of the brewing offsite at another facility. And it's always interesting to watch businesses kind of go through that transition of doing, for going from really, really small and hands-on to a larger scale, and seeing if they can kind of maintain both the variety of offerings and then kind of just that quality that customers have come to enjoy.
Right on. Support our local businesses for sure. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. Is there anything else you want to add, fill people in on that they can find in this week's edition?
Yeah, we have a bunch of good stuff in this week's edition. Colin Yo is back to writing a regular set list for us. So music fans who are looking for things to do to fill their evenings should check that out, because COVID is obviously still here with us. I can't even begin to say how many people I know right now who are down with COVID. So right. I urge people to be safe. But if you feel safe going out, certainly live music is really coming back in a big way. And so there's a lot of offerings there. And then we have a really nice get out about paddle boarding in Humboldt Bay.
Nice.
I can't say, I mean, this is kind of like the sour thing. I mean, to each their own, but I can't say that paddleboarding at Humboldt Bay seems like a great time to me. But Louisa Rogers, our regular freelancer, raves about it. So for the adventurous spirit, that's an option.
That is pretty cool. I like that idea. Not that I've done it, but it sounds like fun.
I think I'm more of a kayak and Humboldt Bay kind of guy, but
yeah,
maybe I'm lazy.
Yeah.
And then on the news side, we have I wrote a long story about some records we finally got released from the Eureka Police Department. I think folks who have been up here a while, it has been a long time now, but 6 years ago there was a police shooting in downtown Eureka where officers kind of went on a wild chase over, I think, 4 or 5 city blocks and shot 42 bullets at a suspect who did not return fire.
Whoa. And
we have spent years now trying to get our hands on the internal affairs investigation records for these shootings, and we finally did and wrote about it.
Do you mind a real brief takeaway, or is it like too deep to cover?
I mean, there's a lot of detail in the story and even more in the records. I mean, I think the big takeaway is, in my mind, is that it's an interesting look at how quickly a situation like this can escalate based on kind of one officer's decision and then a lot of other assumptions. And so basically one officer decided to engage in a foot chase and then engage a suspect in perhaps not the safest way and put himself in kind of a vulnerable position, in which he then opened fire on the suspect, or felt he needed to open fire on the suspect. And he fired kind of so many shots so quickly initially that other responding officers who just heard the exchange immediately thought that there was like a full-on gunfight going on with this suspect.
Oh.
And so then the subsequent calls on the radio reflected that, and that there had been this carjacking, which really hadn't taken place. And it kind of ramped up it escalated the situation and everybody's response to it. And, fortunately, nobody was hurt. The suspect was wounded and taken into custody, but fortunately he's recovered. And, it's just pretty remarkable that no bystanders were injured when you think of that many bullets flying around downtown Eureka at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday when the roads are pretty full and the sidewalks are full and that kind of thing.
Well, dang. Well, definitely something worth checking out this week. I really appreciate these Freedom of Information Act requests that you do. Media is the fourth estate, the purpose of kind of overseeing our government and overseeing the people who kind of are serving the public ultimately. The government works for the people. So you guys do great work there. Both you, Thad, and you, Iridion, thank you both for covering these affairs. We look forward to follow up on both of these topics at another time.
Appreciate it, David.
You are most welcome. North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up, stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you can check them out anytime. Again, Thad and Iridium, we really appreciate you, and everyone out there for listening. Thank you, and take care until next time.